Hello, everyone. My name is Fernanda Marrero He, and I work at the Mayor's Office of Education. I am the project coordinator for the Houston Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights, and I am so honored to be here with you all as the city prepares to launch this new project. In this room, we have educators, city leaders, nonprofit leaders, activists, researchers, and lots of young people who are committed to improving the lives of children and youth in Houston. So if you are on this committee, just know you were carefully selected, and we really do believe that this is a powerful group of community leaders. So as we start this meeting, I want you to reflect on one of your favorite outdoor childhood memories. If you were present during the live session, then we got to share those memories in the chat. If you are watching this recording, then I encourage you to just reflect on your childhood and think about an outdoor experience. Maybe it was a family vacation or just a weekend trip to your local park or a state park. And I want you to think about that for a little bit before I move on to the next slide. So we wanted to start the meeting by thinking about those childhood outdoor experiences that still live in our hearts today, and that you still hold very close to your heart. And that is what the Outdoor Bill of Rights is all about, ensuring that all Houston children have an abundance of outdoor memories and experiences that they will remember their whole lives. And as adults, some of us are young people, and very soon, if not already, you will be making decisions that impact the incoming generations. We have a moral obligation to do right by the children in our city and to make sure that they do have these opportunities. And to continue this message, I wanted to share two quotes that describe the premise of the Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights. And I encourage you to reflect on the memory you shared as I read these two quotes. The first is by Penny Whitehouse, and she says, "Encourage your child to have muddy, grassy, or sandy feet by the end of each day. That is a childhood they deserve." The second quote is by L.R. Nost. "It's time to return to childhood, to simplicity, to running and climbing and laughing in the sunshine, to experiencing happiness instead of being trained for a lifetime of happiness. It's time to let children be children again." For much of this first committee, we discussed the context, the process, and the timeline for the Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights, or COBOR for short. Moving forward, we will be using this acronym just because it's a lot quicker to say. So we'll be saying COBOR instead of Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights. So the Mayor's Office of Education, we work very closely with the National League of Cities to receive grant funding and to implement programs in our city. And one of these NLC programs is CCCN, which stands for Cities Connecting Children to Nature. Many of you may have already heard of CCCN. Maybe this program is very new to you. Both are perfectly fine. A brief overview of what CCCN does. It aims to support municipal leaders in promoting nature accessibility. And so this is where the COBOR framework comes from. And so that is important for us to know as we develop the COBOR. They do provide a general guideline that we are encouraged to follow. There is also a lot of freedom as to what we choose to do with the COBOR after it's passed, and specifically what rights we want to include in the COBOR. That's also up to this committee. And in a bit, I will share what other cities have done. We would not be the very first city in the US to pass a COBOR. There has been about 3 or 4 others who have gone down this route in previous years. And so there is lessons to be learned and other models that we can learn from the other cities who have also done this as well. So to continue providing additional context into how we arrived here, in April of this year, our office had a meeting with CCCN that led to discussions on how the city can improve its work in this area. And one of the key action items mentioned was the development of a COBOR and gathering a group of community members to start working on what this would look like for the city of Houston. And so since then, we have been researching and planning to better understand what is the best way to approach a COBOR. I've been mentioning the Bill of Rights several times already, but haven't actually addressed what this looks like. Some of you are maybe already familiar with COBORs in other cities. Austin, Texas, for example, they passed a COBOR in 2017. So for those of you who already knew about that, then you have an idea of what a COBOR is. But for those of you who are still fairly new to the concept of a COBOR, I wanted to talk about what it is. And so to follow CCCN's guidelines, a COBOR is 4 things. Number 1, it is a list of outdoor experiences that every child has a right to experience. And this can mean flying a kite, climbing a tree, swimming in a lake. And your take-home task will include you reviewing the COBOR of one city to give you a better idea of what we mean. Number 2, a COBOR is also a symbol of the goals a city has for its children's outdoor experiences. For example, the city of Austin, their COBOR, they partnered with Austin ISD to ensure the poster of the Bill of Rights is in every single school in their district. So that's an example of how the COBOR can be a symbol. Number 3, a COBOR is a messaging tool that raises awareness. And number 4, very important, last but not least, a COBOR is a mayoral proclamation, a city council resolution, a value statement, or a program framework. So every city gets to decide how they want the COBOR to look like. For us, we are aiming for a city council resolution. And so at meeting number 2 on June 30th, we are hoping to be joined by either a city council member or a city council staffer to discuss with us the process of introducing and passing a resolution through city council. The key benefits of a COBOR include articulating our commitment to equitable access to nature, galvanizing leaders in a shared vision, raising awareness. Another great example is from Austin. They gathered 1,000 signatures from citizens and organizations before presenting their resolution to the Austin City Council. So we are hoping to do something very similar before we actually present the COBOR to Houston City Council. We want to make sure that there is an online pledge that is circulating in the city for several weeks or several months so we can get as many signatures as possible. So when we do present this to council, they do see that there is already a lot of community support backing this initiative. A COBOR also reinforces citywide collaborations. So in this committee and beyond, we want the Bill of Rights to develop and strengthen partnerships between the city and outdoor nature programs. And on a similar note, the COBOR can also amplify the efforts of existing programs in the city. And other cities have done this, but we could also develop a whole new program. And so as you can see, there are many benefits to a COBOR. This is a very general and broad timeline for the COBOR. Since the project is still in its very early phase, we were hesitant to include specific dates because that is something we hope to decide in this committee and with the help of City Council. This summer, we will establish the specific rights we want to see in the COBOR. In the fall, we will work with City Council to draft and pass the resolution. And beyond 2022 is when I would say the magic starts happening, because our hope is that the COBOR is more than just a City Council resolution. We actually want to see it implemented in the city. And so that is what we are trying to do here. And this is a good segue into digging deeper into what other US cities have done through their COBOR. There are lots of lessons to be learned into what is possible. And I hope as we review other case studies that it will give you an idea of what can result from a Houston COBOR. So first we can look at San Francisco. So San Francisco's COBOR was very interesting and not like the other cities, mostly because it started as a statewide Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights. In 2007, Governor Schwarzenegger, he signed the statewide COBOR for ages 4 through 14. In 2011, 4 years later, San Francisco started the process of developing their own city's COBOR. So on the right side, you can see the Bill of Rights that San Francisco decided for their city. This is an example of a list of rights like we were mentioning earlier. And here in the city of Houston, by the end of this summer, and once this committee wraps up, we are hoping to develop a poster that would look something like this. Obviously would have a different design, different illustrations, and different rights. But every city that has passed a COBOR up to now has developed a poster that is more than just a social media graphic or a flyer, but it can also be used for many promotional materials. If you think back to the Austin ISD example, they printed out these posters and had them in every single school. Austin, Texas is also a great example, and we will come back to Austin many times throughout this committee because from our research, it seems like Austin has really done the most with the COBOR, and they are an excellent model for us to not replicate because we clearly do want ours to be original, but we can learn a lot about what is possible. So on the right side, you can see their Outdoor Bill of Rights. They have some pretty straightforward ones: climbing a tree, catching a fish, picnic in a park. You can go ahead and read those if you're curious about what else they added. But in 2017, the Austin City Council unanimously pushed the COBOR, and they had the support of 1,000 citizens and school districts and organizations as well. And so something else that Austin COBOR was able to accomplish, they created a campus campout guide, which encouraged schools in the Austin area to reimagine their school grounds as parks. And so that has been an initiative that is ongoing in the city. And also in Austin ISD, it encompasses outdoor rights into nature goals with the district's own sustainability plan. And so Austin shows us how we can partner with schools. And that is something that we would love to do with the COBOR. We definitely want to touch base with Houston ISD and all of the surrounding school districts to see how we can work together to make sure that more people are learning about nature accessibility issues, and also how we can bring them into the COBOR and help us implement this COBOR into their own district. We also have Salt Lake City and Baltimore. So Salt Lake City, one of the accomplishments they were able to do through their COBOR was provide free outdoor programming for youth and their families. They do not have a poster to show you all, but they do have specific rights. You can see those on the bullets on the left side. On the right, you can see Baltimore's poster. Baltimore, it seems from our research at least that they developed an Outdoor Bill of Rights, but it was difficult to find out if they did anything further than that. If they have, it is not documented online. Our team couldn't really find much, but these are the next two cities. So we went over San Francisco, Austin, Salt Lake City, and Baltimore. And so during the live session of this first committee meeting, we went into breakout rooms and we discussed these three questions. If you missed the first meeting and you are watching this recording, then I still encourage you to think about these questions. If you would like, please go ahead and email me. My email is fernanda.marrero@houstontexas.gov. I would love to hear what your initial thoughts are about a Houston COBOR, specifically what is exciting you about the idea of this initiative in our city, and does anything concern you? We also are equally as concerned about hearing the concerns that you have about a COBOR. Next, I'd love to hear what you want to see in a Houston COBOR. So are there specific issues in nature accessibility that already come to mind? Because that would be important for me to know as me and the team develop the agenda for meeting number 2. And lastly, what would you like to see result from the Houston COBOR? So we went over some examples of some cities that took it way beyond just a city council resolution or a mayoral proclamation, but they actually worked a lot on the implementation of the COBOR. And so also interested in hearing, what do you want to see after the COBOR, and what impact would you like the COBOR to have in the city? So in the invitation sent to all of you, where we requested your participation in this committee, we included a document that went into detail on the roles and responsibilities of committee members. And so I'm not going to read all of it today because I'm sure many, if not all of you, have already reviewed that. But if you haven't, I do encourage you to please review the document if you haven't already. In these next 2 slides, I'll briefly go over the main roles and expectations for the committee. So the most important role you will have as a committee member is developing the actual list of outdoor rights. And we will do this through whole group and small group discussions, surveys, and considering what outdoor experiences are most relevant to Houston children. And we also hope to discuss ways to implement the COBOR over time. We saw that some cities, they kind of stopped after a city council resolution. For us, we are hoping that the COBOR is just the beginning. On a similar note, we will raise awareness about the COBOR, like how Austin got 1,000 supporters before presenting to City Council. I think in Houston, we can get even more, and that means all of us here using our influences, using our networks, our platforms to get as many pledges as possible. And a really important role we all have is to amplify children's voices. So the COBOR is not an isolated project, but rather aligns with the efforts of many existing movements in the city to include young people in the decision-making process. And so that is why we have many youth on this committee. That is why Laura, who manages the Child Friendly Cities Initiative here at the Mayor's Office of Education, is also part of the committee and has been an advisor on this project. And so in your breakout rooms and during whole group conversations, we ask that all the adults share the space with youth, because we want to make sure that we are practicing what we preach, and that includes being inclusive of all committee members. This next slide reviews the meetings for this committee. This exact table is also in the Google Doc, which was shared in your invitation. So we do expect members will commit a total of 4 to 5 hours, considering each meeting lasts 1 hour, and each meeting also has a minor take-home task. The tasks are not meant to be time-consuming. We do highly encourage that you make sure you prepare for the next meeting, because this is a short-term committee. We are hitting the ground running, and there's a lot of work for us to do. So if one day you really cannot complete the take-home task, just let us know. It's not the end of the world, but it is going to prepare you for what we're going to talk about at the next committee meeting. So It is very important for the productivity of the committee that everybody does understand the time commitments and the expectations for all committee members. And the July 21st community event, that is the last row on this table, that is an optional event for community members. This meeting will consist of a type of public forum where we invite community members to give us feedback on the final draft of the COBOR. We want to gather their feedback through polling, through discussions, and before we present this to City Council, we want the community to know that we did also invite them to provide their own feedback on the COBOR. So this is the first meeting take-home task, which will prepare you for meeting number 2 on June 30th. Each committee member has been assigned a specific city to review its COBOR. We would like for you to review the resources provided and be prepared to share what you learned or what you found interesting. Of course, you are encouraged to review all of them if you have the time. I think there's so much to learn from all cities, and especially when you look at all of them, you can kind of start comparing and seeing how some cities approached it differently. And so if you do have the time and the availability, I would encourage you to look at all the cities to gain a more thorough understanding of Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights in the United States. But again, you are only being asked to look at the city that you were assigned to. That does wrap up our first Houston Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights Committee meeting. Thank you all for being here and for accepting the invitation to share your expertise and your personal experiences with us. I will be sending a follow-up email with a recording of this meeting and all the links that were shared in the chat and a PDF of this presentation. We are really excited that you're here, and we will see you all next week for meeting number 2 on June 30th at 1:00 p.m. Have a great day.